In 1991, my family had been living in a split-level ranch house on Long Island in New York. At the time, my father was 46 years old and a fairly husky guy. He had jet black hair. My brother, who was about 15 at the time, and I were up late watching Saturday Night Live in our living room. It was just after the show ended at about 1 o'clock in the morning, and we had been laughing about the show somewhat loudly. We heard our parents' bedroom door open up, and we both said to each other, "Shit, we just woke Dad up." We both looked over at the bedroom door, and it was now wide open, but we could hear our father snoring in bed. Standing right in the open doorway was an old man. He was slightly hunched over, wearing a white dress shirt with a collar and blue pants. He had completely gray hair and looked straight at us. He was also relatively thin. He looked completely solid, not transparent or anything like that. My brother and I looked at each other and simultaneously said, "Did you just see an old man?" We then described to each other exactly what we had just seen, and it was identical. When we went over to the room to investigate, our father was still in bed snoring. He had never gotten up. Our mother was next to him, sound asleep as well. My brother and I have talked about this experience many times over the years since then, and tried to figure out if we saw a ghost that night. The really weird thing is that now in 2021, exactly 30 years later, our father looks identical to the apparition that we saw in 1991. He looks gaunt and thin, has totally gray hair, and has the same posture, slightly hunched over, that he didn't have then, but which the apparition had. It was most certainly him that we saw that night. Okay, so bear with me, this is a bit of a long story, and it was from 10 plus years ago, when I was probably 10 or 11. Just for context, the house I lived in was a ranch style with a basement. My mom and her boyfriend, we will call him Keith, lived in the basement, and the kids, 4 including me, lived upstairs. There was the living room and kitchen and a hallway leading to the 3 bedrooms and bathroom upstairs. I was home alone at the time. My mom and Keith used to go out a lot or throw parties at the house. And during those times, my mom would encourage us kids to find somewhere else to stay. Well, wouldn't you know it, I didn't have any friends' houses to stay at that night. Luckily, they were just going out to dinner, rather than having a party, so I was okay to hang out at home by myself until they got home. Nothing out of the usual, I was playing on the desktop and watching TV. All of the lights were on because I am terrified of the dark based on some stuff I experienced as an even younger kid. I got bored and turned off the TV, left lights on because I'm literally terrified of the dark, and I went to my bedroom corner of my room and kept my books in there and some blankets. I got comfortable and was a couple of chapters in my book when all of a sudden I heard typing on the keyboard. I know nobody was home because my bedroom window is right next to the driveway where they would have had to pull in. I go out to the living room to see what was going on. The TV is now on, but muted for whatever reason, and the computer was off. Not just sleeping like I hadn't touched it in a while, but full-blown turned off. I know I wouldn't have turned off the computer, and I never put the TV on mute, so I get freaked out and turn on the TV with volume and turn on the computer. Then I went back to my room and kept reading. A little goes by when all of a sudden the TV turns off and I hear someone walking around. I get super freaked out but walked out there thinking maybe my sister came home. Nobody was there, but the computer was turned off again and the TV was muted again. I say, okay, weird I guess, I'll just leave it. And I go back to my fort to read. Then I hear weird noises from the vent leading to the basement. I can sometimes hear my parents talking down there normally, but they weren't home. It sounded like deep low whispers that I couldn't understand. It didn't scare me, I was just intrigued and kept trying to listen to what they were saying. Then all of a sudden, all of the lights turned off besides of my room. I peeked my head outside my fort to look out into the hallway. When I looked into the hallway, even though it was almost pitch dark, I saw a very, very tall shadow man with bright eyes walking slowly towards my room. I was stunned. I didn't know what to think or do. I was just stuck. It got to my doorway, and as it was about to duck down to get into my room, I heard the whispers in the basement again, and the shadow man stopped moving and just stared at me. Since he wasn't moving anymore, I thought it would be safe to hide under the blankets and cry until my parents got home. I heard them pull into the driveway hours later, and as they got out of the car, all of the lights turned back on. And I run to the door crying and screaming and hug my mom, and I'm trying to explain what happened, but I'm too freaked out to make any sense. After the incident, we were able to talk about stuff, and it turns out everyone in my family had experiences with the nice spirits. They were more pranks and jokes and nothing serious. We were thinking maybe it was my grandmother who recently passed and Keith's dad. However, nobody else experienced the Shadow Man. The Shadow Man followed me around in my dreams for years and years. It wasn't sleep paralysis, I mean like literally he would creep into my dreams. I would always be dreaming of hanging out in usual places with usual friends. Then in the dream I would get scared, look around, and he was there following me, never saying anything, but taunting me and communicating that he wouldn't go away. And in the dream nobody else could see him. I always knew when the dream would happen somehow. Of course, not awake, but as I was falling asleep. I've wanted to share this story for a while and finally convinced myself that it would be worth the subreddit's time. This is a relatively mild experience compared with a lot of the things I've read on the sub, but it is 100% true and is still the strangest thing I've ever experienced. As part of my university degree, I went to the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico to do field surveys in various parts of the rainforest. We traveled across several sites looking at plants, animals, and doing a bunch of tests. This one site in particular was a sectioned off part of the rainforest about 2 miles in diameter that was semi-managed by the government. We went there once in the day, walked around the site, did our tests, and then went back to the hotel. The rest of the day we were allowed to relax and study our notes, and then in the evening we headed back there to study the nightlife in the rainforest. We arrived at the site, unpacked our gear, paired up with our accountability buddies and groups, and then went into the rainforest. We had 1 torch per group, so a lot of us used the torches on our phones to see where we were going. We walked around the same route as we had in the day, and I was vigilant in checking my phone and its battery because I was terrified of getting lost in the dark in the rainforest. We were just over halfway with the loop around the site, and I was sitting comfortably at around 80% battery as I had the foresight of fully charging before heading out. Then nothing. The last thing I remembered was admiring the reflection of the eyes of the crocodiles intently keeping watch over our group. Then, when I came back to, I was on the other side of the villages that we had seen earlier in the day, alone. My phone was at 1% battery. I was completely separated from my group, and I remember just staring at this old abandoned hut with the dim light of my phone. I immediately started to panic before I heard the laughter from another group on the opposite side of the small village about 50 feet away, so I rushed over and formed up with them. When I eventually reconnected with my group, they were worried and said that I was walking along, not saying anything. And then when we reached the village, they lost sight of me. I've tried to be as rational as I can thinking about the experience. I was tired, getting used to a new climate, and arguably not as hydrated as I should have been, which could obviously play several large roles. However, it is important to note that I have a phenomenal memory, as that is how I have learned to study, and to completely forget what would have been a 40-minute walk is incredibly unlike me. Thinking back on the event, I still get chills, and the more I try to rationalize it, the more I feel like something unexplainable happened that night. My only comfort really is that apart from the fear of being abandoned in the rainforest at night, I never really felt threatened or in any danger. Quick edit. To address some more questions I've received, we were put into groups of 3 to 4, and there were 8 groups walking in a straight line about 20 feet apart from each other, with the lectures leading the front and back. I have talked to a few people and done a few Google searches, and I'm not discounting the possibility that I may have had some sort of physical ailment or a dissociative episode. The only thing that still eludes me is how I would manage to walk away without being noticed by anyone, and how much my phone immediately drained in that short period. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed these true paranormal experiences I found from r/paranormal on Reddit. The first story was called In 1991, My Brother and I Witnessed Our Father as He Looks in 2021 by El Hombre Molecular. The second was called Shadow Man Visited Me at Night, Other Entities Protected Me by High and Dry 420. And lastly, the final story was called My Strange Experience Doing a Nighttime Survey of the Rainforest by TrafalgarDLaw. I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and please let me know what you think below. Also, feel free to hit the subscribe button and turn post notifications on so you won't miss the next video. Thanks for listening, and keep an eye out next time you're by yourself.